Hello, everybody.
Hey,
How's it going today?
not too shabby here.
Good. Tyler in noisy area today. I like that. Hey, Julia. You're muted, by the way.
Good morning, everybody. Hey, Tamara, how come I can see you? You're muted.
She got a new setup, it looks like.
Yeah.
Fancy.
So yes, she is so fancy.
She's still muted though. I'm gonna ask her to unmute.
Yeah.
There. I said I'm fancy with my deer heads behind me. Are they like coming, the horns coming out of my
Yeah, if you
head?
just lift your head up just slightly.
Okay.
It's a good look for you. What do you, how'd you get a camera?
I normally am in my other office, but I'm in my, this is my laptop.
Okay, that's why. Okay, just wondering. Uh-oh, where'd it go?
Whew. All right. Okay, I've used up all my cough drops. I got one more cough drop. Yay. Well, we missed some of you last week. Did you get your etching done, Julia? Yeah, good. Good.
Now I'm doing a big Finding Nemo or Nemo fish
Oh, yeah.
one, so
Nice.
yeah, it's all good. How about you? Anything exciting?
Nope.
Aaron, I didn't meet you last time. I'm Julia. I'm here in Minnesota.
Nice to meet you. I'm over here in Jackson, Michigan.
Gotcha. Cool.
All right. Well, I'm going to share my screen, I think. Let's get this started first. You know, Julia, after I asked you guys last time if I should shorten up our videos, cut things out so that they're not as long. Wouldn't you know it, somebody got on and left a comment and said, you got to cut your videos down. Nobody ain't got no time for 2-hour videos. That's all right. Can't make everybody happy, right?
Nope.
Okay. Share. I am sharing my screen. Everybody able to see that?
Yep.
Move this down here. Perfect. Okay. So yesterday, or not yesterday, on Friday, I don't even know what today. Today's Tuesday, yeah. So on Friday, we talked about the toolbox over here, from the pick tool all the way down to the artistic media tool. So we're going to pick up today on the rectangle tool. Okay. And again, feel free to interrupt if you have questions. I'm not really able to see very well. You guys are on my other monitor, so I'm not paying attention too much to the video. So if you just unmute and ask questions or interrupt, please do so. That way I'll know if you've got anything we need to talk about. Actually, first, I guess we should say, I should ask, is there anything that you have questions on from last time, or anything that you've got questions on at all that we need to cover before we get into the toolbox stuff? Nothing at all? Okay, we're good to go then. So we'll start out here with the rectangle tool. With the rectangle tool, you draw a rectangle simply by clicking and dragging, and then you let go of your click to drop the rectangle where you want it to be.
Hey, Cameron.
Yep.
Will you put your click indicator up on the screen too, please?
I put it down in the lower right-hand corner. Do you see it there?
I see it now.
That way, it was up in the upper right, it was getting hidden by the videos once it
Oh,
posts.
gotcha.
So I put it down there.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. And also, if you're watching, when I left click, it does a little red mark. If you can see that.
Yep, I can see that.
And then right clicking does a blue mark.
Oh, okay.
And then if I zoom with my mouse wheel up, it does a little gray semicircle upward and a gray semicircle downward if I zoom out. That's with my mouse wheel. So just so you're aware, that's what those do.
Okay.
That's how the cursor effects work. Okay, so to draw a rectangle, you just simply click and drag and let go. I normally, when I draw rectangles, whether I'm building a panel or whatever the case may be, doing a flat marker, I don't care how big it is when I build it. I'm just going to click and drag and let go, because then I will come up here and resize it with the object size up on the property bar. Or in the recent, my most recent workspaces, you can actually hold, you can type in Shift and X at the same time, and it pops up the object size actually right at your cursor. So then I could type in 24, hit Tab, hit 12, and hit Enter without ever having to move my mouse up this way. So I think that's a little bit faster. That's why we added that in. So if I was trying to build a 24 by 12, again, I just make my rectangle first, and then I can go up and size it. Rectangles are special shapes. So they've got special options, which is why up on the property bar, they've got options up here for rounded corners, scalloped corners, or chamfered corners. Because either by typing in a number up here, or by interactively doing it with the shape tool, you can change the edges of your shape because it's a special rectangle shape. It's not been converted to curves yet. And so it's got these more interactive features to it because of the way that the shape is built. So sometimes if I want to do panels or something a little bit special, I'll use these type of options. You can also, when you're doing it, you don't have to do all of them at the same time. So if you wanted to do just top corners, you can put 0 on the bottom corners. When you're grabbing the nodes, you can, I want to say that you could just grab the ones you want. Yeah, so I just held Shift to grab those two there. I'm not sure why I ended up grabbing the other ones though. That's weird.
Number did you type into that last toolbar, 2.642? What is that measuring?
So that is the, it's going to be from here to here, this amount. So it's how much it's coming in from the top and in from the sides. Okay, so I just drew this box, which is 2.624. So from this very edge corner, or corner edge, from the corner here, the amount that I'm pulling it inward, that's what that number is. So it's the radius of my amount. If I was doing a scalloped corner, you would see, if we were thinking of this as a full circle, it's basically the radius from there to there. Does that make sense? Okay. So that's rectangle. If we go to the flyout, they have a 3-point rectangle. I've never actually used this one. I don't know why you would want to use it over anything else. I think it just maybe because it works more like a CAD program would, where you can drag and then drag out to get your sizes. I don't know. I've never really used it myself, but that's the way that it works. Is you click and drag to get your height or your width first, you let go, and then you pull out, and then you click again to end. So that's the 3-point rectangle tool. Next one down is going to be the Ellipse Tool. I usually call it the circle just because it looks like a circle, but it is really an ellipse tool. Again, this is a special tool, and the way that I made it a circle versus an ellipse, okay, is that while I was doing that, I held Control, and holding Control will make it a circle. If you, while you're drawing, if you hold Shift, it will actually draw from the center point. So if I click here and start drawing, if I hold Shift instead, it'll start from the center instead of a corner. And if I hold Control, it will make sure that it's a perfect circle as opposed to an ellipse. So usually I'm going to use keyboard shortcuts if I want to make sure that it's a perfect circle. And because it is a special shape, again, it gives us options up here for an ellipse, a pie, or an arc. And the way that these are determined, again, is basically by starting and ending angles. So you can type in numbers like 180, and you'll see here that it's drawing an arc. If we wanted to, we could click on pi, and it would make that a pie shape instead. This button is going to change the direction so that it's only building this portion of it instead of the other portion. Okay. And more often than not, if I'm doing this, I actually do it interactively with the shape tool. So with the shape tool, you can click and drag this to where you want it. If you move your cursor to the outside of the shape, it does an arc. If you did move it to the inside, then it does a pie. So depending on whether you're inside or outside, will determine whether or not you want it to be an arc or a pie. So if you want to make Pac-Man real quick, you could do that. And you can move both of the starting points, or the starting and the ending point, I guess I should say. Okay, any questions on that one? Pretty simple. Okay, so the next one is underneath there, again, a 3-point ellipse, which, again, I'm not really sure why one would want to use this. Maybe just that you can set a certain diameter that way. But when you click and drag and then you let go and then you size it the way you want and then click again to finish it. So click and drag and then drop it. All right, the next is a whole bunch of different ones nested under here, but we'll go with Polygon first. Polygon is very simple in that you're just drawing a polygon with this number of points or sides. So right now we're doing 5, so that would be a pentagon. If we wanted an octagon, we can come up to 8 sides, or whatever the case may be. Hexagons and all sorts of gons. The crazy thing with this particular polygon shape is you've got a node here. All of these lines have nodes that end them, and as you drag them, it's going to interactively shape that polygon. So if you wanted to create a quick star like that, for a Jewish monument or something, you could just click on that and pull it. Or if you wanted to go even further to make a star, or whatever the case may be, if you pull these inward, you can pull them in like that. If you want to get really fancy, you can add nodes. So I'm just double clicking to add a node, and I can pull it out like this. I can double click and add a node over here. I can change these to curves instead and just start curving these. And then I can make flowers or shamrocks or all sorts of different stuff with this, the Polygon tool. And I can always change the size. It's interactive, so I can go 4 or 6 or however many I want to go to build all sorts of fun flowers and stuff like that.
Cameron, did you have to push anything keyboard to make them all change at the same time, or they just automatically do when you drag a node?
Nope. So if I click and drag a new one, okay, anytime I grab any one of these nodes, it's going to do all of them at the same time.
Okay.
So I didn't do anything special. You can do crazy stuff too if you start going like this. Not that you would want to, but. So Polygon tool, pretty neat in that you can do crazy stuff like that, right? The star tool very simply makes a star, and it's got little control points here for how fat you want that star to be. So this red control point, you just click and drag on that. I think you can do it on all of them, but it's signifying with this red point there that it is a special shape. And if you look down here at the bottom, it's telling you it's a star with 11 nodes. And as I move that, it's giving me distances and angles and stuff like that in case you ever needed to know that information. Spiral, I've not really used spiral except for maybe once on a design for New Zealand. But I mean, all it does is draws a spiral based on how many revolutions you want. So you set that up here, what direction you want it to go. And, you know, so if you're doing some sort of like shell, or not shell, but yeah, anyway, a spiral design like this. This one, change the rate at which the new spiral expands as it moves outward. So if we do less, it's going to be more even, where this one we had it set for 100. And so it was a lot tighter on the inside as opposed to the outside of the spiral. So that's your spiral tool. And then we've got common shapes. Every once in a while, I'll use the common shapes. They're not my favorites, but when you click and drag, it'll draw a heart. The shapes are determined by this right here. So you can click and drag, and they've got all sorts of different stuff in here. Again, not a lot of this is very monument friendly, but they do have some stuff like this banner thing. And with the banner, what you can do is, I thought you could, maybe not. I was thinking that those had control points too. Banner shapes, flowchart shapes. Let's see, let's delete this one. I don't do a whole lot of flowcharting in CorelDRAW, but I guess some people must. So we got a banner shape here. There we go. So there's, again, this red control point. So if you click on that, you can determine how squishy it is, I guess. So if you needed to make a quick banner, quick ribbon, then that's one way of doing it, I guess. It's really weird. Oh, it's huge, that's why. There we go. My zoom wasn't working for a while and I couldn't figure it out. It was because my shape was so large I had nowhere else to zoom. All right. Impact tool. This one I have used for doing like starburst kind of effects, or if I'm doing a laser etching or something and want to show rays of sunshine or whatever the case may be. With the starburst, sorry, not starburst, with the impact tool, it's got all sorts of different settings up here for how you want it to look, how thick you want your things to be, your maximum thickness, your minimum thickness. So if we, did 1 inch for the minimum and maximum of 2.5 or something like that. And you get all sorts of crazy fun stuff. And so I've used this a little bit for starburst kind of looks, but not a ton. You also choose how much spacing you want between each of these. One of the things, like behind praying hands, a lot of times, you know, they'll have that kind of look, or behind a cross, or so I have done that before, where I'll draw a cross in here. And something like this anyway, so that it's got a little bit of a burst behind that. And you can determine too how much you want it to I wanted to say in here somewhere, line width, that's just random. I wanted to say that you can make some of these shorter, but can't remember which button that is. So anyway, we can do a different, longer video on all the different things you can do with that, but that is what the impact tool is for. Graph paper, I've actually never used graph paper. It's building basically rows and columns. When I ungroup it, each of these is its own square. So I guess, in theory, if you wanted to do a whole bunch of bricks, you could say, look, I've got 8 bricks wide and 4 bricks tall, and go like that. And then you can, you know, size it and say how much room. So let's say we've got 36 inches this way and 24 inches that way or something. Then all of a sudden you've got individual rectangles for all of your different bricks. I don't know. That's a different idea. So that's graph paper. And that leads us to that's all of the drawing and shaping tools. Any questions on any of those? Nope. All right. Now, Julia, can you remind me, in one of our beginning videos, we talked about the text tool, right? Because that was one of the first ones we talked about.
The text tool?
Yeah, the text tool.
Yeah, we talked about it. It was, but I don't remember how much we covered. I'd have to go back and look at my notes. Oh yeah, because we talked about artistic text and paragraph text.
Yeah, so I'm not going to repeat what we talked about there for the text tool, other than just that same thing, that there are 2 different types of text, artistic or paragraph. So if you click, this is artistic. If you click and drag, this is paragraph. And the 2 different texts work differently. They have different uses for them. Usually I'm going to use paragraph text if I'm doing a brochure, or if I'm doing some sort of book layout, or if the one thing that I use it for in monuments a lot is if I'm doing war memorials, because you can come up and do columns of text and then have a whole bunch of columns of names and that sort of stuff. So that's one use that I use paragraph text for. Or if I'm trying to fit to a certain shape, like sometimes if I've got a teardrop shaped stone, or if I've got a foot or something and I want to do the footprints in the sand poem, I can throw the text inside the actual shape of the foot. So those are different reasons for using paragraph. But most of the time I'm using artistic text. Underneath that is table. Again, not something that I use. Looks very similar to the graph paper stuff to me, but my understanding is that it's more like tables in Word, where you can click inside of them like this. And it's going to fit inside that table as if it were a paragraph text box. Then when you break everything apart, the table itself, if we ungroup this, these lines are just single lines as opposed to a rectangle for each of those different cells. So you don't end up getting, rectangles next to rectangles that would get you double cuts. This is just going to be a single cut that way, and a single cut all the way around. So as far as cutting goes, this might actually work a little nicer. And it's nice that you can type directly inside of those as well. So those are those two tools. Next one down are parallel dimension tools, horizontal and vertical dimension, angular dimension, segment dimension. I'm just going to load up a design here so that we can see what each of these does. All right, get rid of that. And so the parallel dimension tool is basically where you're going to click somewhere to start your dimension, and as you drag, it gives you the number for how long your dimension is. When you let go, so I'm going to come up here and then I'm going to let go. As soon as you let go, it adds another point there, and then you drag outward or inward and then click one last time, and that's going to set your dimension line. So the reason that it's parallel is because you can also do, if we had this stone where the stone was like this, then it's going to run parallel with that line and show you exactly how long that is, even if it's at an angle. So that's parallel. The horizontal or vertical, as far as I know, won't do that. So if I click from here and here and come over, and then if I move this, so it's just going to give me a top and bottom, right? It's not giving me how long that is. It's just giving me how tall it is. And whether or not it is horizontal or vertical is determined by which way I drag to begin with. So if I drag this way and then down, then it's going to be, horizontal versus vertical as far as the dimension goes. These get stuck to the actual object itself. So if, or at least the parallel one did. Looks like that one did too. I don't know why this one didn't though. Let me try it again and see if I can get it to stick to it. Could be because I was attached to something else. Yeah, if you look here, I'm actually attached. When it made it, it attached itself to the base as opposed to just the die shape. So if I break these apart and get rid of them, then if I come back here and rebuild it from here to here, come on. And I think when I drag this, it's going to go with it. Yeah, there we go. So if you're making dimensions on things and you end up resizing this to the page of, the page size or something, you need to realize that that's going to go with it unless you break that dimension apart. If you go up and tell it to break it apart, then it's on its own. And then as you drag it, it's going to scale with it. Other than the outline size, which is this, is still set to be what it is. So you'd need to change that if you want it to be really small. Just in case you needed to shrink your designs down. Angular dimension, in case you needed to show the angle of something. Top view, let's say you had a top view of a stone and you had another stone that was going something like this. And you need to show the angle there. Then I believe what you do is, it's been a long time since I've done this, so I'm just gonna try. I think you grab it this way. Nope, okay, I did that wrong. So I'm gonna go down this way. I did that wrong again, stop. I'm gonna start at the bottom, come up this way, let go, and then come over to this way. So then it's giving me my dimension or my angle, 49.5 inches. So same thing if, you know, if you had a stone laying this way, obviously this should, in theory, be 90 degrees, right? If we go from here to here, then pull up this way, then it's 90 degrees. So that's how your angular dimension tool works. Then segment dimension, that one, I'm going to back up here to this. And let's say we had a notch taken out of the stone. So we just took this and trimmed it away. Trim is up here somewhere, trim. And we'll just mirror it to the other side and trim this side as well so that it's even. Okay, so let's say we've got a notch like that, right? If you need to show that to your manufacturer as far as how much of a notch that is, you should be able to use the segment dimension. And all you have to do is actually just click on it. So you just click the segment you want and pull out, and it's going to give you the measurement of that segment. So the same thing for here, I can just click and pull out, and it's going to give me the measurement of that segment. And then the last thing is call outs. If you need to point out anything, you can click, drag, and then click again. And then it's going to give you the ability to type text. So this is polish. I don't really use call outs in my workflow, but in case you ever needed to point things out, you could. And you can always make these, the size of this larger so that they can see exactly what you're pointing at. This says it's the gap between your actual object, I guess. And so if we want to, oh, I guess it's between the text and that. So 5-inch gap between there and there. Different call out types. So it's interactive that way that you can choose how you want the call out to look after you've already created it. You can just change how you want that to look. All right, any questions on any of those? No, all righty. This next one is the connector tool. I actually never ever use this. I think again, it's meant for maybe flow charts or something. I really don't know. Wonder if we go to the hints, if it tells us. We're going to come over here and we're going to go to hints. Boop. To draw a straight line connector, drag from an anchor point on the first object to an anchor point on the second object. That's great, but why would you want to? I don't know. So you're just dragging from there to there. Now you've got them connected. As you move this one, it stays connected. So again, I guess for flow charts and that sort of stuff, you can connect things together. I actually try to hide this most of the time. I click on this plus sign here and go to my set of tools and actually turn it off, because I've had people use the connector tools thinking they could connect nodes with it, and that's not what it's meant for. So it actually messes things up if you've got a gap in your design and you wanted to use the connector tool to connect those. That can mess things up. So I hide it most of the time just because it doesn't do anything that I would want it to do. All right. The next one down, these are, I use these quite a bit to fancy things up and make things a little nicer. So we'll go back to having the stone on here. The first one is drop, or just shadow, okay? It used to be called drop shadow, I think, but they've changed it to shadow. it's interactive, so if you click on an object, you can drag and it's going to create a shadow of that object. You can determine what kind or what style of shadow up here. So you can choose whether you want it to be a perspective shadow or you know, whatever the case may be. So if you want to show some lighting and that sort of stuff, or if you just want to separate your design from other things. Let's say on this one, I drew in something like this. Okay. And I've got this polished. Oops. So I've got this polished here, and I've got this as, we'll go with rough rock on there. When I grab this piece, if I come over and do shadow and do something like a medium glow and change up here on how much I want it to feather and what color I want it to be, that sort of stuff. Then what it does is when I build my fill, or when I fill it in with my fills, let's just grab maybe a red, it's going to add a little bit of a shadow here to show that there's depth between this and whatever's behind it. Again, it threw a shadow down at the bottom, so that's not, I wouldn't really want a shadow at the bottom. So you can take this shadow tool, which is actually, it's a rectangle shape with the way that the tool builds it. And so I'd go up to object and just convert it to curves first. And then I can grab the bottom of this and pull it up, and it's just going to cut that off. The more I pull that up, the more it's going to cut off. But that way I can cut it off at the bottom there. And in that manner, I've got a little bit of a shadow, which, you know, just shows a little depth. I like to use it on things too, like if I'm putting on a bronze marker or something to show depth around a bronze marker, or if I was doing a ceramic, you know, if you wanted to show that there's a little bit of depth to the ceramic, you can do the same thing. Just, again, grab the kind of glow that you want. And if you use a drop shadow a lot that you like, you can click the plus sign up here and add it as a preset, and then it would just get a name and it would show up at the bottom. So I've done a couple down here: round raised, square raised, engaged, large, bronze. I've done a couple of my own presets there. But the other new thing in, I want to say in 2020, that they added this is the inner shadow tool. So now, in addition to being able to do drop shadows on the outside of your text, you can now do inside shadows. So if I go inward this time, and I'm just going to do an inner edge. And I can mess with these settings, and you can see how it applies differently based on how I have the blur mode and that sort of stuff. So you can get different looks of your shadows depending on how you want it to look, and that way you can simulate maybe either depth in carving or rounded edges or that sort of stuff. That's where I went and took, I'll just make this a little bit more bold. I went and took a preset and made this round raised preset so that whenever I click on that, then it pops it up that way. So then it would look almost as if it's, you know, rounded lettering. Something like that. Okay, contour. Contour is used for if you have a shape and you want to make another shape based off of the contour or the existing shape, then what you do is you use contour, and it's interactive. If you just click and drag, it's going to build to the outside if you click and drag out, or to the inside if you click and drag in. When you let go, that's when it creates the contour. And then it gives you this up here, which is actually your offset amount. You can type in a number if you want to, 1.5 inches or whatever the case may be. You can also tell whether you want it to go outside or inside. This button here to center, I don't use that very often in monuments. I have seen people use it for laser etching text on bricks, because you can basically set so many steps between these that the laser will go and run along each of those until it burns, basically turns your brick into glass and etches it that way. That's about the only time I've ever used going to the inside. But when you do the inside or outside, this is your amount of steps. So the more steps you have, the more it's going to go inward. You've got colors if you want to change your colors while it's still interactive. So if you wanted the outline color to be a certain color, or if you wanted the color of your fill to be a certain color, you can change that here interactively, and it then stays that way. As I draw and drag this up, it's going to go with it. But you can always, once you're done with your contour, go up to Object and break that apart, and then this is separated from the inside piece. There are other options too, as far as how you want your corners to end up, and if you're doing colors, you know, that this determines how the colors show up. I don't really do colors though in my contours. Any questions on contour? It's probably one of the more widely used tools as far as monuments go, because you can draw your V lines, right? If I bring in a design, and let's just say, I don't even know what this design is. Let's just bring something in. Okay, so I've got a bird design here, right? This outside portion, if I get rid of that and I've got just my inside pieces, I can create that contour with, I can create the V line with my contour tool, just by coming up here and saying 0.09 inches to the outside. And really, I want this to be black. And I usually want this to be black as well. So it's creating that contour for me. You go up to Object when you're done and break that contour apart, and then you've got it separated from everything else. So I use contour quite a lot in monument work, probably more than any other tool. Sometimes I drag it out and put it in the workspace all by itself just because I use it so often, but that's what contour does. Okay, the next one down is blend. Blending is where you can take one shape and another shape, and you can basically create a blend between this one and this one, and it will morph from this shape into that shape in however many steps you've got it set to do. Okay. If you're doing something like this, I mean, you can do, you know, pretty creative things that way. But the thing that I use blend most often for is things like rosaries, because you can have a circle like this and duplicate it. And then you can do a blend. So if I were to blend from this one to this one, now I've got a whole bunch of circles. And if I'm on my stone shape and I draw something that looks like this, what you can do is you can take this shape and apply this blend to the shape. So I'm going to fit the blend to the path, and I'm going to tell it to blend along the full path. And now all of a sudden I've got all these beads on my rosary, and if I want them to be all the same, you know, I'd just change this side. So I can just say I want a 1/4 inch bead. Over here I want to go to 1/4 inch beads as well. Okay, and depending on how long my path is, I may or may not, I may want it to be more beads. And so I just change up here interactively how many beads I want along that path. So the more I click on it, the more it's going to build beads. And again, if I want these to be larger, I can just change the size of them to be larger. Like that. If I had a thickness on my line, I should say I want 0.09 inches for my line thickness. Then I've got that there. You can also do things like contouring. And then if we wanted to, we could contour, or we could blend contoured shapes so that they you know, are blending across the whole thing as well. Or if we don't contour it this way, what you would end up doing is you break this apart. Once you're done, you come up and break that blend group apart. It separates it so you got your first one and your last one, and then it groups all of the in-between objects. So if we ungroup all of these, then we're just going to combine them all together so that they become one object of beads. Then you can go back to your contour tool and do an outside contour. And then you've got beads like that all the way across. Necklaces, beads, rosaries, all sorts of fun stuff that you can blend that way. So that's what I use blend most often for. Distort just takes an object and will basically distort it based off of clicking and dragging, pushing and pulling, or you can do zipper distortion. I've used zipper distortion a little bit with doing like rock pitched edges. I don't usually do it interactively though. I'll usually come in here and, you know, tell it how much amplitude and frequency and stuff I want it to do. I'm gonna undo that. Just mess with the numbers this way. You can see how it kind of distorts it. If it's smooth, it's going to be smooth like that. If you don't do smooth, you can also randomize it. Anyway, just little effects that it applies to your shape. Envelope is, let's say we had, let's do this. We've got our contour. We're going to build a contour and pull it down like this. We're going to break it apart. And then we'll grab this and make it maybe a little taller. Something like that. And maybe we'll use this to trim this back a little bit. We'll trim that one and this one. Okay, so we've got a shape here. If we wanted to, we could do my last name here. And my last name is just going to be, you know, centered or just inside that. Let's go maybe 3. But what you can do if you wanted to is you could shape to this particular curve. So we could grab the envelope and shape our text to match that curve if we wanted to, so that it was matching. And this one, this is interactive this way, in that you just grab the pieces and pull on them and, you know, distort it that way. There is also along the top up here where you can create envelope from. So if we started out back to where we were, you can click create envelope from and then click on an object, and it would use that object as the shape. So now I've got my text fit to that particular shape. I like to use this maybe with wedding rings, so that you can fit your text inside a ring and make it look a little bit nicer. Let me see if let's just go and pull one up. We'll go to, oh, here's one. We'll pull in this design here. It's not a very good one. I don't like the way those rings are. Not quite what I was looking for. So let me find another set of rings here. Just to show you, I just did a search in my classic collection for rings, and it pulls up different options here. So if I was trying to fit text like this one's pretty good, into a certain area, and I can build my text to basically fit this area here. So I would grab my contour and pull in a little bit of a contour here, break it apart. Now I've got my contour shape, and I'm just going to erase, or we talked about the eraser before, right? You can just erase pieces that you don't want. Come in here like that. So you can build things like this. And then when you type in your date, or your text, if you wanted to, you could tell this to envelope and grab the shape from this. And then it's going to, you know, look something like that. That way the shape of your text is curving the way that your text is curving, or the way that your rings are curving, right? So different things like that you can do with envelope. The next one down, extrude, is if you want to show depth of an object. So if we come back to this one, if we want to extrude this, basically grab it and click and drag, and it will create an extrusion. So it's creating the top of it for us, going toward that vanishing point up here. And there's all sorts of different methods and types that you can do as far as your extrusions go, and angles and all sorts of different crazy stuff. Not something that I use a ton of, except that I do use extrude in this 3D simulate button. All it's doing when you click on that is doing an extrusion, and then it's breaking that extrusion apart and getting rid of everything else that it doesn't need. So that's what Extrude is for. And then Block Shadow is a newer tool. So it's, I want to say in 2018, 2019, somewhere in there is when it came around. And it is used for basically shadowing your text, or you can do other objects as well, but I use it most often for text, where if I want this to have a shadow effect, I can type in, I'm doing double the amount that I want my V-line to be, because it goes over the both outside and inside. So if I want it to be 0.09 inches from here to there, I need to double that and do 0.18. And then you can tell it what angle you want your text to go, or the shadow to go. And it's also interactive. You can click and drag and build your shadow that way, however you want it to be, as far as thickness and direction of the shadow. And you can type in the numbers as well for depth and degrees and that sort of stuff. The nice thing about it is that because it's an effect applied, you can, it's still editable. So if I changed my name to something else, then the shadow is going to go with it. It's going to just reapply that shadow to the text. The other nice thing about it, if we hit V and go to wireframe, you can see it's very simply created this shadow already the way that it needs to be in order to cut it. So all we have to do in order to get this to be cuttable on your cutter is go up to object and break it apart. So now that shadow is its own object, and now it's cuttable on the cutter. So that's pretty nice for being able to shadow text and other objects like that. All right, any questions on any of those things? No? Okay. Transparency tool. I use transparency tool a lot because what it lets you do is it lets you add depth to your designs and basically shading. So if I had a regular stone like this and I threw in some granite colors, let's say that this was also polished, so it's on an all polished base. You don't see anything between these two, right? But if we were to take this one and just draw a rectangle from here to here and make this black, and then we're taking our transparency tool and throwing in a bit of a transparency on that black, now all of a sudden we're seeing depth. Okay, so you can see that this is in front of that. If we look at the vases, if we add in a vase, it's got all sorts of transparencies in all different directions, highlights, shadows, and everything. So if we were to break this or ungroup it into the different pieces that make it up, you can see all of these different transparent objects over the top of the existing object that are used to create that. So it was really just a regular vase shape with no definition to it at all, right? But as soon as you add in all those shadows and highlights, then it takes on a lot more form. And so you can do all sorts of interesting and fun stuff with transparencies and shadows that way. Another thing I use transparencies for is if I'm bringing in artwork, something that I need to draw over the top of, then I can bring in a design. I'll bring in a picture of my dad at, we went out and visited him last year. So here's my dad eating some goodies. If I wanted to draw over the top of him, then a lot of times, I'll size this. So I'll put it over here on the stone, the size that I want it to be. And then I'll often just invert my selection and hide everything that I don't want anymore. And then I've got him, and I'll just make him a little bit transparent so that when I start drawing over the top of him, then I can see better what I'm working on. So as I draw, let's change this to 0.09 inches. There we go. So then as I draw over the top of him, you know, I'm able to see better what I'm working on because he's a little bit more transparent there. Something like that, right? So I use transparency a lot for that kind of stuff where I'm going to be working over the top of something and want to be able to see better what I'm working on. And when I'm done, I'll just go back to the hide and show all, and then it's going to be exactly where it's supposed to be on the stone. Transparency is, again, an interactive tool, and there are different types of transparencies. So you've got uniform, where the whole thing is going to be the same transparency, or you've got linear, or you can do vector patterns or bitmap patterns, all sorts of different patterns as far as your transparency goes. I usually stick to either uniform or linear when doing mine, just to keep it simple, but you do have the options for doing all that other stuff as well. All right, we've got just a few more minutes. I think we're gonna just cover the last of these tools really quickly so that we can get through the toolbox today. Color eyedropper. What this does is it lets you sample anywhere on your page a color, or if you say select from desktop, then it will let you sample anywhere on your desktop a color. So if you're trying to match a specific color, then you can do that. The other nice thing that it does is you can not only do colors, but let's just say we got some text here, okay, and we have some other text here. If we wanted to, we could grab this text, go to the dropper, and oh, sorry, the next one down is the attributes eyedropper. So if we want to, we can not just sample colors, but we're going to sample attributes. So if we sample the attribute of this, then we can apply it to this, and it's going to do the same size, same font, same everything. So you can apply similar attributes from one thing to the next. So this has a granite fill applied to it. I don't know if it grabs the granite fill or not, but let's try. So we're going to sample from this and click in here, and it did. Look, see, it applied that same granite fill. So there are different things that it will let you choose. This is the outline, the fill, and everything as far as size. So if you had resized something, let's say we resized this down to 50%, you could sample the transformation. So you got your size, sampling your size and applying it to this, then it's going to sample those transformations that you've done. Interactive fill tool. What it lets you do is fill in objects with either colors, or in this case, we're using it to do a bitmap pattern. You can also, because it's interactive, change how big that the grain of your stone is, if you really wanted to make it more interactive that way. One thing that I use it a lot for when it comes to interactive is 3D stuff. So let me see if I can find some 3D shapes really quick. While I'm looking for my 3D shapes, does anybody have any questions on anything we've covered so far? Okay, so if we were to fill in this, I mean, it's not true 3D, but it's simulated 3D. Because we filled in this portion here, when it fills it in, it's going off of, so I'm just going to hold shift and double click the rectangle tool, and that will actually build a rectangle the size of my object's bounding box. So it's filling it with this size of fill. Okay, if I wanted to make it look more natural, I could use my interactive fill tool and drag this so that it skews it, and I can also shrink it down, and that's then going to make it so that my fill is matching more the size of the shape. And so I can have control over how I want that to look when that's filled. So dragging this way, dragging out, dragging in, shrinking down, that sort of stuff. So that's going to look a bit more natural, a bit more realistic than the way that it was done before. And that's done with the interactive fill tool. Smart fill is used when you have intersecting objects and you want to create a new object based on where those are intersecting. So if we look at this, this is actually you know, a full rectangle that's at a skew. But if we just wanted to build a shape that was just the top portion of this minus the stone on top of it, you can use the smart fill to click in here, and it's going to find anywhere that there's basically a boundary, an intersection of objects, and build a new shape based off of where those intersect. So then if I wanted to, I could make this white. Again, coming back to transparencies, I can make this a little bit transparent or do a linear transparency. With the transparency tool, you can add steps. So if you double click anywhere inside of this, you can have multiple steps of your transparency. So I'm just going to, and you can also click and drag. So I can just click and drag additional steps. So darker and lighter, whatever the case may be, as far as transparencies go. And then you've got this thing here, which determines the angle that that's going at as well. So you can do effects like that. That's not obviously the prettiest thing in the world, but that's what can be done with transparencies, is things like that and building other objects using the smart fill. The one thing where people run into the most trouble with smart fill is you have to realize that smart fill will create a new shape on top of your existing shapes. And so if you're going to cut this on a cutter, you're going to get double cuts because you've got this new shape and then you've got the one underneath it. So if you're using smart fill to kind of shortcut your way into filling designs, you need to realize that on the back end, when it comes to cutting, that might end up making more work for you. Mesh fill, I think I'll actually, I'll show it really quick, but it definitely takes a while to figure out how to use the mesh fill. But basically what the mesh fill does is it lets you fill a design using a grid system. So the more points you have as far as how many intersecting areas, you can do fills that curve and match certain things. So if you were trying to, you know, make a flower leaf or something, or a facial features or whatever, and you're trying to bend your fill to match those, that's what mesh fill is for. It's quite complicated, actually, I think. So definitely not a for beginners video kind of thing, but just so you know what the tool does, that's what mesh fill does. The last one on here is knockout. This current knockout tool we were working on building a knockout tool to replace this one up here. The downside to the knockout tool up here is you have to hit escape to end your selection. And the benefit to this one is that it is a custom tool that you didn't have to hit escape on. But in the last few versions of CorelDRAW, they've actually broken these custom tools. So right now it does nothing. So if you click on it, you're not going to have any success. But I'm leaving it there just so that when they bring it back, the functionality, it'll be there and we'll be able to continue working on it. That's what that knockout tool is for. So that's the end of our toolbox. Any questions? Anything you need to see that we didn't cover? All right, well, that gets us to about time for how much time we have today. So thank you guys for coming. Thank you all for being here, and we will continue again on Friday.
All right, thanks. Take it easy, everyone.
We'll see you, Aaron.